Picture this, you save up for 8 months for a kick-ass gaming PC and the day finally arrives. You gather all of your parts, you meticulously put it all together, it works, and boy is it great. But then, just a few months later, there's a new part out there and your PC just isn't compatible. Could this all have been avoided? And just how future-proof should your PC really be? Well, let's start with the basics. What is a future-proofed PC and what would it look like? Well, put simply, it would need to support all of the latest and upcoming technologies. So if you want to upgrade your gaming PC in months or even years to come, well, you'd be able to. Now, obviously a PC can never be 100% future-proof, but even on a cheaper system, upgrading the processor or the graphics card is very easy and very common to do. After all, a desktop PC is fully modular, so it's very easy to grab one component and pull it out, and then swap this in with a newer, shinier product. Especially with the graphics card. Most people tend to upgrade this every 4 years or so you just take the old GPU out, put your new one in, and then you're golden, right? Well, not always. Gaming performance is indeed dictated by the graphics card, but GPUs are always restricted by the speed of the bus, as well as potential bottlenecks from the processor, RAM, or even your SSD. So while you can indeed grab a new graphics card and drop it in, chances are you won't get the exact performance that they're advertising out of the box. Oh, I seem to have cut myself on the graphics card. That's a new one. Workplace injury! You'd be surprised with just how much performance you can get from upgrading the graphics card in an older system though, as shown by my Cyberpunk upgrade video that you can find in the top right corner of your screen, but it is always wise to plan these things ahead of time. Currently, most motherboards ship with PCIe Generation 4 support, as this is the modern standard that pretty much all graphics cards use. If you do want to be a little bit future-proof though, you can get hold of a PCIe Generation 5 Z690 motherboard from Intel, or the soon-to-be released AM5 motherboards from AMD. This would ensure that you're not bandwidth limited when you go out and buy a shiny new Gen 5 card in a few years' time, but as the boards that support it are rather pricey, it's not necessarily worth the money. Especially when you factor in that an RTX 3090 currently doesn't bottleneck a PCIe Generation 3 interface, so the 4000 series cards really would have to properly blow us away in order to utilize Gen 5 effectively. So perhaps more importantly, you should pay closer attention to the processor, as this is not only going to help you upgrade later, but it's going to give you more performance today. Here's an area that you do need to be very careful though, as ultimately it's all a game of diminishing returns. The more you spend on your processor, the better your frame rate can be, but only if your CPU bottlenecks. So don't go out and spend £500 on a processor and then £250 on a graphics card, because it just doesn't make any sense. The thing to do is to grab yourself the best gaming CPU. And if you want to know more about this and what the best one is, my video goes live next week. Get subscribed, you're not going to want to miss it. Personally, I think just grab yourself an i5 or a Ryzen 5, as unless you're doing any workloads on your computer, by the time you actually need any extra CPU performance, there'll be a newer, faster model out there that you can probably upgrade to anyway. Newer processors are not only faster, but they often have more cores inside too, which lets you do more tasks on your PC at the same time. And at the end of the day, more tasks are always good. Take this video for instance. I need to explain future-proofing to you and tell you all about today's sponsor. Have you ever been hacked? Lost all of your passwords via phishing? I have, and let me tell you, the aftermath, it's not very fun. This is exactly why this video is sponsored by NordPass. And NordPass is the password manager that not only makes your life so much easier, but it also keeps you safe and secure online. NordPass lets you create a secure and unique password for every site and service that you visit, all without having to memorize any of them. We've all used weak passwords before, adding ones to existing ones, or worse still, reusing the same password again and again on different sites. NordPass fixes this exact issue, giving you a virtual vault with all of your passwords, credit cards, and secure notes. This means you can shop faster, log into sites in just a couple of clicks, and keep up to date on data breaches that you might have been affected by. NordPass is a zero-knowledge password manager too, so only you can see what's inside your encrypted vault. Best of all, it syncs across 6 devices, so you have access to everything, everywhere. You can land yourself an exclusive NordPass deal, plus an additional 1 month for free, just by using my link down below, or use code Centric at checkout. Now, unfortunately, upgrading your CPU may present a whole new problem. Does your motherboard actually support this new chip? Motherboards typically use the same socket for a minimum of 2 years, which makes it very easy to grab your new chip, install it, and then just unlock new performance. It is a bit more tricky with Intel, as they tend to update the socket more regularly, but if you buy an AMD AM5 motherboard, chances are it'll be upgradable for years to come. The only caveat is that you need to update the motherboard BIOS before you can install the new chip, But this is simple enough to do, so worry not. New motherboards also bring DDR5 memory along with it for the ride, and this is a huge topic for gamers. But is it worth future-proofing today? Well, right off the bat, there's no extra performance to be seen in games at this moment in time. You can find my video all about this in the top right corner of your screen, but in my tests, the average FPS was all but the same in every single title. But of course, DDR5 is new, and give it a few years, sprinkle in some faster GPUs and CPUs, and it might make all of the difference. The dilemma at the moment is all about pricing. This stuff is so expensive, and just like the Dire Straits sung about all those years ago, oh, I forgot my joke. Money for nothing won't set your GPU chips free. Personally speaking, I would either grab a DDR4 motherboard right now, or wait a few months for AM5, as the prices will come down eventually. It's just a shame that boards are one or the other. You can't use DDR4 today, and then upgrade to 5 tomorrow. PCIe Generation 5 is going to be a huge thing on AMD's AM5, but not just for GPUs. It's also going to support PCIe Generation 5 storage to boot. And this is a cool one, because Gen 4 drives are now essentially the same price as Gen 3, which means developers are well aware that people have these in their systems, and the applications are now starting to take full advantage of these speeds. We have Microsoft's Direct Storage baked into DirectX and Xbox Series games, as well as Nvidia's RTX IO, and these have been in the devs' hands for years now. I'd wager that if you're running off of a SATA SSD, you're going to start to run into issues with AAA titles in the not too distant future. Meanwhile, those on Gen 4 will finally start to see the fruits of their labour start to flourish. Gen 5, however, meh, it usually takes 3 to 4 years to really start to see these things actually become properly adopted and to fully adopt the storage speeds. So is it worth paying through the nose now when you can upgrade this later? Probably not. At launch, these drives will no doubt be mega expensive, and the motherboards to support them likely not that far behind. So this is probably a safe one to leave for now, if I'm being totally honest. Instead, as is pretty much always the case with the gaming PC, most of your budget should go towards the graphics card. But is there a game of diminishing returns here? Just how much should you spend on your GPU? Obviously, more performance is always better, but there is a limit. Why spend hundreds of pounds on a graphics card to run 4K games when you're running on a 1440p monitor? This is the main area that people tend to properly future-proof, and I get it. I also went for something overkill. I had a 680 SLI set up on a 1080p screen, but then again, I am a massive nerd. You always need to factor in price to performance and the games and the settings that you're going to be running it at. I think it's always sensible to spend a little bit more than you need, if of course you can, but please don't get carried away. Work out a graphics card's performance per frame, and you'll soon see that the big boys are way more expensive per FPS. So why pay for a big, loud, power-hungry GPU that you just don't need? Maybe you're going to upgrade your monitor soon, or you simply must have every setting at Ultra. Fair enough, but always buy with your head and not your heart. And this leads me on to something incredibly important. Please, 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 always do research on parts and make sure there is something that is going to be suitable for you, but also that they're not about to just get replaced. If you buy yourself a high-end GPU today, you do so knowing it won't be current for more than 4 to 6 months. And yes, that might be absolutely fine to you. But for many, it really won't be. You're about to see loads of deals, marketing and ads for all of these limited shelf life parts, which is fine, but remember why they're on sale in the first place. A top tip that I issue to anyone that will listen is to always bump up your power supply to a slightly larger one than you actually need. They literally last for absolute yonks, and I can guarantee you'll get the itch to get yourself a better graphics card, and you best believe that you'll be pissed if you don't have enough wattage. It'll cost you another 10 to 25%, but rest assured it'll be worth every penny. In a nutshell, a future-proof PC is never going to be the best value computer, and those telling you in the comments that you should upgrade this because it's going to be great for future, if I'm honest, they don't always have your best interests at heart, even if they think they do. The number one thing is to always prioritize your graphics card, as this is the key to your in-game FPS, so you always need to get the one that you actually need. Buy yourself a gaming CPU that doesn't hold back your rig, but don't overspend. And get a motherboard that has the right feature set, all the I/O, all the USB, it supports everything that you actually need. But again, don't spend loads of money on the best gaming motherboard, because that's not actually going to influence your FPS. And then the newest names on campus, DDR5 and PCIe Generation 5 storage. Definitely worth buying at some point, but probably not today. All you really need is a rig that looks incredible and has the physical capacity to upgrade with more fans, bigger components, and airflow good enough to cool those future components that you'll no doubt be buying. It is impossible to spend too much on a computer, but please don't sacrifice all of the value to get there. Focus on getting the highest FPS today, but make sure upgrading tomorrow is as seamless as possible.